I'm Sasha Stefanovic from Purdue Men's Basketball, and you're watching Brags in the Stands.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, we are live and back and better than ever. I am your host, Gregory Braggs Jr., and my co-host alongside me, as always, is my guy, Kraig Bowers of Boiler Diehards. If you're not following the Boiler Diehards Facebook page, you should be, because they do a lot of great stuff on there. And then, of course, the man we summon to talk ball with us every time we have a great guest on, and he always gives us so much of his time that one day I'm going to have to put him on salary. Unfortunately, no one is making any money around here. We're just having fun talking hoops. Bobby Buckets Riddell, the color commentator for Purdue Men's Basketball, and, of course, a former guard himself. How you doing tonight, Bobby?
I'm doing great, fellas. Excited to chat and definitely excited to talk about our number one team in the country once again.
Number one once again. And, of course, we have our – yes, and it's a beautiful thing. 2 years in a row. What should have been a rebuild year, and now all of a sudden they find themselves number one in the country, the fastest team to ever go unranked to number one in the country in NCAA men's basketball history. Pretty impressive feat by Matt Painter and the coaching staff, and you got to give a lot of credit to these players as well. It's been a fun start to this season and still a long ways to go. We have a special guest joining us, and we don't want to keep up too much more of his time. He's hanging out backstage, and I'm hoping he's ready to go. If his camera is, we're going to fire it up. None other than our guy. There it is, live and in color. Fletcher Loyer joins the show. Seeing that video, Fletcher, what was that like for you? That was the first time you guys were introduced as Purdue Boilermakers for an official game. What was that experience and moment like for you?
What's up, guys? Thank you for having me.
Of course, appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, it was awesome. Obviously, coming to a few games as a recruit or as a fan, coming to watch my brother play. It's obviously a great atmosphere, and not some players get to experience. So to come out with the light show they have and the lights off and that introduction board is a pretty sweet feeling.
Yeah, it had to have been, and you should be really proud. All the work that you've put in personally to get to this moment. As I was saying before, this is my co-host alongside me here, Kraig Bowers, diehard Purdue basketball fan and an alum to Purdue University. And I'm sure you know our guy, Bobby Buckets Riddell. He's He's been a good friend of ours to the show here for the last few years. And, I know we've been sharing communication here the last few weeks. Bobby's been putting up with me now for 2 years, so you have to feel bad for him. But we appreciate all of your time, and appreciate your efforts coming on. So, we'll just get it going because, Bobby's good friend and, of course, former Boiler Chris Kramer. He was threatening us when we said you were coming on. He's like, this guy's got finals to get done. So I was like, hey, we're just going to do flashcards tonight and get you ready for your test. But at the same time, we'd love to ask you a few basketball questions. So, Fletcher, what's it like for you so far here? There's been a lot of hype here these last few weeks. I mean, going into the season, I think a lot of Purdue fans didn't know what to expect with you and Braden coming in as freshmen and starting. I think that took a lot of people by surprise that you guys were in the starting lineup so quickly. And now you've ascended to number 1 in the country, pulling off the win in Nebraska. You had a hell of a game there, and it was a battle in the Big Ten. And now there you are on, they put the graphic up when you guys finally got the number 1 ranking. What has this experience been like? Is it been somewhat of a whirlwind getting to this point?
Yeah, it's been pretty unreal. Obviously, coming in during the summer, getting used to the guys, getting used to the coaches. You didn't really know what to expect, and starting off unranked and then now being number 1 is a pretty cool feeling. But I think it was great for us starting off unranked and then now showing what we can do, getting number 1 and getting some pretty big wins. It's been good for us and also shows like what kind of team we are. We don't really care where we're at, where we're ranked, but being number 1 is a cool feeling, but we know we got a lot more to prove and a lot more wins to get under our belt.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fans out there that were like, we don't want the number 1 ranking, and Kraig and I pushed back on that. And there was, fans, just after what happened last year, the team got the number 1 ranking and then the Rutgers, never an easy game to play, just like any road Big Ten. What would you say to those fans that are like, don't want the hype, don't want the expectations? How do you feel about that kind of pressure? Do you take that in, or do you see where fans are coming from there?
I mean, of course you want the number 1 rank. It's something you work for. It's something you go out there every night to prove you're the best team on the court. And to people that say that, it confuses me a little bit because the last year, obviously, you understand the circumstances, but we know we're a little bit different. All the guys talk about in the locker room, just that feeling of not coming out ready to play and playing harder than the other team. So we're just going to focus on that. And with this number 1 rank, we're not going to let it change how we play.
Yeah, and then one more follow-up, and then I'll let Kraig, and we'll kick it around the horn to Kraig and Bobby. But to that point, at one point I think maybe it was after you guys came back from Portland and you took down Gonzaga and Duke in back-to-back games, and West Virginia for that matter. It was a hell of a week for Purdue sports in general with the football team as well. But after you guys won those games, I believe that's when Zach Edey sent out a text to all of you guys. It was reported that he sent a text to all of you guys, and he was somebody that went through this last year where the hype and the expectation and the buildup this early in the year. What kind of a leader has he been for you guys and kind of the foundation of what you guys are trying to do here?
Yeah, that texting out was something pretty small, but it really goes a long way for him being one of the best players in the country and the best player on the team. It's something huge that all the guys kind of looked at and read and were like, yeah, we really got something special here. Let's not let any ranking or any hype about us change that. So I think him saying that to us, and especially for the younger guys, really just listening to the coaches and staying with our heads above water and not really letting it get to us is very important for us. And for him to come out and say that was super special. And I really took it as a learning point. And I think he's been very special. I mean, obviously in the Nebraska game, it was a little bit more difficult with them just sending double teams, but he's been very patient. He hasn't complained or anything. He's been awesome. It's not easy for someone to have to kick the ball out all the time when there's such a big threat. So I thought that was very impressive of him.
Yeah, I mean, he is having an unbelievable start to his year. Right now, the favorite to win National Player of the Year. So I'm sure there's a lot of personal pressure that comes with that as well. But you guys seem to be taking it head on. I'm going to let Kraig here take it from here.
Yeah, Fletcher. First of all, I just want to say it's been a joy to watch you play. I think in college basketball, it's it's kind of a rarity these days to see people that are true 3-level scorers that can score from the 3-point line, that have a true mid-range game and that can get to the rim. So I have really enjoyed that part about your game, that you're a true 3-level scorer. I want to take this back a little bit to you choosing Purdue, and maybe if you could just talk a little bit about what was it that made you choose Purdue and decide to come to West Lafayette?
Yeah, early on in the recruiting process, they made it pretty evident the kind of role that I could fit into play. And it was pretty easy to take that and take it seriously, as watching guys like Sasha and Ryan Klein and Dakota Mathias play that kind of shooting guard role where alongside other good players. They made that very evident and shown me film. And the coaches just did a great job. Early on, it was Coach Shrewsbury who recruited me. But then after he left, Coach Painter really took a big step into making sure I came here. So just credit to them for showing me how I'd fit in and kind of making it all come true, as obviously it's worked out so far.
I guess one other question I'd like to ask you before I throw it to Bobby here. This weekend, I think something that's probably going to be pretty special for you to get to go up against your brother in a college basketball setting. But I want to maybe go back to those backyard brawls a little bit. Do you remember how old you were when you first beat him in one-on-one? Was that like a big moment for you? Can you remember that day?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it was never really playing one-on-one. We've always went to the gym together and got shots up. So it was more like shooting competitions and just battling out while our dad was rebounding. So we've always been very close. So it will be very special for us. But when your older brother is such a great basketball player and such a great friend to you, it's pretty easy to look up to him. So I'd say it was more us just friendly competition, whether it was getting shots up or watching games and just comparing to other people.
Yeah, watching this little interview you guys did for the news, and your dad, is a scout or was a scout in the NBA. You guys were going around to different teams. I noticed here you guys are rocking the Sixers and the Cleveland jersey. So what? You're a LeBron fan over Jordan? Is that what's going on here, Fletcher?
Yeah, I'm a LeBron guy.
Come on,
all right. I was gonna finish that, but when Kraig asked this question, pull up some of these pictures. I saw that. I was like, all right, I'll have to work around that. Nobody's perfect, Fletcher. I mean, you're a good basketball player, but Jordan over LeBron here. We don't allow that at Braxton stands. But I get it. The younger generation. They just named the MVP award after Michael Jeffrey Jordan. So maybe I'll send you some highlights if you're not familiar with his game. So what, Bobby?
I like it. I mean, he probably watched The Last Dance, and that was some of the. Some of the behind the scenes.
I'll have too, Bobby. I once went to Michael Jordan's basketball camp. I finished second in a 3-point contest for my age group. I choked in the championship though. So enough about me, Bobby. Why don't you go ahead and fire away?
Hey, what's up, Fletch? So just to kind of piggyback onto your days in childhood playing ball, you just mentioned being a LeBron guy as far as the Jordan LeBron debate, but when I was a kid, everybody pretends like there's somebody else. I feel like when they're in the driveway or in their basement or whatever playing basketball. For me, I was a Bulls fan growing up, so it was MJ. Or from a Purdue standpoint, as a Purdue fan growing up, it's kind of funny because I was pretending like I was chasing Brian's dad, Conzo Martin or Matt Waddell. So kind of funny how now you're teammates with those guys, Chase and Brian. But for you when you were growing up, who was that guy? 3-2-1. Who are you acting like you were as far as your favorite players growing up?
Yeah, kind of grew up in Philly for a little bit. My dad was with the Sixers. There was a little bit of Allen Iverson. So just watching him a lot. He was obviously a great player, but being around him a little bit was special.
That's why the headband really game's going strong.
Yep, the headband. My brother always had the full fit going. But I'd say a little bit of Allen Iverson. And then also Kyle Korver, growing up watching him, it was pretty unreal the shooting abilities he had. So kind of watching them play and watching them work out in person was obviously a special experience. So just kind of looking up to those guys.
Yeah, Kyle had a good run with the Chicago Bulls too. So I'm going to keep going back to that. I don't know if I'll let it go tonight, but the one thing too, I mean, everybody knows about your sharpshooting abilities. You're great from beyond the beyond the 3-point line. I mean, but I think the thing that I don't think people realized, certainly me, just starting to get familiar with your game here with Purdue is just how well you can take it to the rim. Now, that was put on full display when you threw it down on the entire Nebraska interior, because that was insane. Brought me out of my couch, certainly the other day on Saturday. But just overall, the way you attack the rim and use the glass, I think, is something that I've grown to appreciate, just how good you are at it, just the touch and just the feel around the rim. You know, how were you able to develop that and that comfort? You know, explain how you look that comfortable at this level when you just got here.
Yeah, I'd say just working on it all my life. We really getting into my freshman and sophomore year, I was pretty much known for just shooting, really. And I knew if I wanted to play highly at the next level, I'd have to become a little bit more of a guard, a little bit more of a point guard, which I played point my junior and senior year. So really just getting used to a little bit more, not just being able to step out and shoot it, also creating my own shot. Like I said, working out with my brother, we always worked on floaters quite a bit. So in high school, my floater was a huge part of my game, just coming off screens and getting in there into the lane. And I was never really more athletic than anyone, so I really had to get a little bit finesse and work my way around the paint and get into that floater game a little bit.
Yeah, you mentioned playing point guard in high school, and I had some really good footage of you squaring off in your final game against Braden Smith. What was that experience like, knowing that you guys were eventually going to be teammates, and just your memories as far as coming up in the high school ranks and your memories of that game?
Yeah, we actually got to play him twice. We played him earlier in December, and then once again in the playoffs. So really knowing who you're going to be playing against with the next few years, and just seeing what kind of player he was pretty special. And then he came out with the win in the playoffs, but we got him earlier in the year. So we're always talking a little bit of smack about those games, but it was definitely cool to play against him and go to battle with him.
Yeah, I mean, did you at that point, did you realize like both of you guys were going to be ready for this level, or was there still like, hey, we got a lot to prove here? Like, how confident were you that you two were going to be able to come in like you have at this point?
Yeah, with him right away, I just noticed the amount of like energy he plays with, and he's got a little spunk to him. So really just I knew he was going to come in confident, and he wasn't really going to let anyone step over him or whatever, because he's a freshman. So I really found that interesting once I got to know him. And then this summer, I thought it was super because he was hurt all summer and he never really got to play. So I was a little bit worried. But right away when he came in, you knew he was going to get that spot. And he didn't let anyone talk him out of it with how confident he is.
Yeah, it's certainly been impressive, watching you guys ascend here. So, as I try to get this off, but shout out to Jacob Wright for sharing the video along. Did some really good work. We're trying to get him to a game to capture some stuff while you guys are at the college level, but he's been one that's been following your game a lot. So, you mentioned a little more about Braden. What's it like to play off of him now that he is your teammate? You mentioned the spunk and the hustle, and how he can create for others. What's that like for you to play with Braden Smith now?
Yeah, well, it's always easy to play with a guy that just wants to win, and that's really all he loves to do. So, but skill-wise, he's the best passer I've ever gotten to play with. There's sometimes he's driving in there with the trees, and he'll kick it right out, one-hand pass over his shoulder right to me, and it honestly impresses me sometimes. Sometimes I miss the shot because I'm not even expecting it. But he's a very good passer, and he's got very long arms, so defensively he tips a lot of passes, and it's just very easy to play with a guy that really plays that hard and just wants to win.
Yeah, I mean, when Kraig and I and Bobby was there as well, watching the scrimmage right here, this got the biggest applause of the day from all the shots made and Edey dunks and 3 points going down. The play that got the most applause was that play where Braden he missed the shot, but he just didn't give up on the play. And I think that's become contagious. Purdue put out a video today how you guys are all going to the floor. At one point, Zach Edey was the first to the floor at 7-4. For you guys, how much has this become like a rally of, we're going to be relentless to the ball. The other big play was when Braden smacked the ball out of bounds to the other end, and then you're diving to the other end to try to get it. How much has this become a rallying cry for you guys to play like that?
Yeah, like you said, it's contagious. You see one guy go after the ball, you're not going to let the next guy get to it before you. So really just building off one another, and we're not going to come out any night and let someone play harder than us. And if we do, it's our fault, and we might lose the game because of it. So I thought we made that a statement in Portland. We were going to come out and rebound. We were going to play harder defensively too. So really, like you said, contagious. It's just building off one another and coming out ready to play each and every night.
For sure.
Hey, in the post-game press conference with Painter, he mentioned that he'd never seen you dunk out of all the times that he scouted you, and I assume he meant in practice too. So, was that your first in-game dunk, or had that happened before and Painter had just never seen it, or what? I guess what made you lock in and go, you know what, I'm throwing this down?
I had 2 in-game dunks in AAU. I didn't get one in high school, just high school basketball. So everyone kind of joked to me about that. But I could always talk some smack to them about scoring 2,000 points and not having to dunk the ball. But I'd say in Nebraska, I just had the lane, and it all happened pretty fast, honestly. I don't really know what in my mind to dunk it. But
I asked Fletch after the game, I was like, dude, were you trying to dunk that the whole way? He's like, I kind of just kept rising, so I just went there.
Yeah, because you came around the curl, and you said you've been working on your floater game. So, was that you just kind of unconscious there? Because, to make the decision instead of go for the floater to just throw it down on them, that was pretty brave, pretty bold.
Yeah, I had one similar in high school where I curled to the middle and went up and laid it in, but I was easily up there. So, and everyone was like, why didn't you just dunk it? So that definitely went into my mind a little bit when I was up there. And then I think him fouling me actually helped a little bit for me to throw it down. But
the little boost.
Yeah, what did you think Painter saying in the post game? I don't know if you caught it, but he was like, "If we're calling that a dunk," is what he said.
He admitted it in practice. He said it, and I said, "What was that, coach?" And he admitted it. But
there's definite rim grabbage. Definite rim grabbage.
Yeah, oh my gosh! And you got fouled.
You were definitely down, up, coming down on the rim. That's definitely a dunk.
And one too, coach.
Now on Saturday, if you turn the corner and you see your brother coming with you, you throwing down over him?
Oh, I'll definitely try to get a dunk on him for sure. That would be sweet to put in the basement whenever he comes over.
Have you guys come up with what the bragging rights trophy is going to look like on Christmas Day for this game?
We haven't yet, but we both get to go home for a few days for Christmas. So I'm sure the results of Saturday will definitely be talked about, and I'll have to talk to the family about getting a little trophy or something to hold over him.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you dunk on your brother and there's somebody captures this with their photography skills, we're gonna make a fat head of it and put it everywhere around town. For sure. What do you got, Bobby?
To kind of continue on about some of your offensive game, and I totally agree with what Kraig was saying earlier. Really impressed, certainly, with your ability to score at all 3 levels. And obviously, you had a lot of fanfare as far as your outside shooting ability coming into Purdue, winning that 3-point competition in high school and 2,000 points, as you pointed out. But one of the aspects of your game that I wasn't really aware of, just because, of course, when I saw you committed, I'm going to YouTube, checking out highlights, see what your game's like. And of course, most of the highlights are you just getting buckets. But something you've done tremendously well, that I've been pleasantly surprised with is your passing ability. Is that something that you got just because like Foster always made you pass to him in the basement, or what's caused you or given you the ability to pass as well as you do? Is that just a feel for the game thing, or what gives you that ability?
Yeah, growing up, it was always evident to me who made other teammates better, and that's something we always talked about. And my dad always mentioned to us, you got to make your teammates better, and one way to do that is create for others. So really just growing up and playing to win is what I focused on. So really being able to pass, you had to be able to do to win. So really, obviously, I worked on shooting a lot, but also passing. It's got to be we always worked on just throwing firm, nice passes. So it's always just kind of come a little bit natural, but also just watching the game a lot, studying what kind of angles you got to have to get guys open. And playing with Zach obviously is very helpful because his percentages are so high when you throw it in there. So really it's pretty easy to play with him, but other guys, if they're throwing it one more to you, you got to throw it one more back. So really just playing to win has helped that tremendously.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about getting to the floor and that being contagious. I mean, I think it's clear the passing you guys are showing is contagious as well. The sharing of the basketball, the ability to pass up a good shot for a great shot. And I know that's something Matt Painter teaches and really pushes to every one of his team. And it seems like you guys have fully embraced that. What has it been like for you to learn his system? You know, we see in some of these plays, you know, Gillis coming around to curl. I mean, not to blow too much smoke, because like I said, we ain't trying to hype you up too much. We know you got a long season to go, but to watch you and Braden and Ethan Morton play is I mean, for me, basketball poetry. I really appreciate the way you guys share the ball and constantly stay moving. What has it been like for you personally to start to grasp Matt Painter's system? Because just from watching Sasha, I'm a good friend of Sasha Stefanovic, as most people know from this show, you know, he would talk about how hard it is to learn this system. And it seems like you guys are picking it up fairly quickly, which is exciting to know that, you know, in a couple of years, that's when you're truly going to perfect it.
Yeah, coming in during the summer and even before that, watching it, you notice all the sets we run and just a lot of complexity to it. And coming in during the summer, you're listening to some of the terms they're saying, and you're like, what is going on? It's pretty difficult to get your head all around it. But once you kind of figure it out and start listening to everything he says, he could be saying something not even about basketball and you could learn something from it. So really just listening to him, and whether he's talking to Zach about big guy stuff or whether he's talking about Brain about playing point guard, you can pick up something. So really in practice, listening and all the drills and just kind of picture yourself doing it in the game has helped quite a bit. And I would say just he says no matter what, you can mess up a play, but as long as you play hard, you're doing your job. And really just focusing on that, I'd say, has been important. But it's also helped watching a lot of film, going in with the other coaches, and everyone's there to help you. Ethan and Brandon and Mason have been huge with that during practice, just talking you through drills or talking you through different defenses that you got to learn and you got to perfect to be able to get good minutes out there.
You mentioned defense, and then I'll kick it over to Kraig, but for you, did you feel like that was a strong point in your game? You know, the defensive ability, and do you feel like you still like where do you feel like you're at as a defensive player so far, you know, at this level?
I'd say coming in, there was definitely quite a few question marks about that, kind of who I would guard out there and what kind of role I'd fit in defensively. But I'd say I've picked up on what we need to do pretty quickly. Obviously, there's still a few minor mistakes and a few mess ups out there, but that's just going to come when you're playing that much and playing that hard. But really watching a lot of film with it. Coach Lusk has helped tremendously with many things, going in there and watching practices and watching games now. But really just I'd say picking up on it quickly and listening to your teammates, because everyone's been very helpful. And I'd say I picked up on it pretty quickly on what I need to do and what I need to improve on going forward.
I'm sure it helps having that anchor behind you and Zach Edey and all the bigs for that matter. You guys have a bunch of bigs, but having Zach Edey behind you probably gives you a little more confidence, huh?
Yeah.
Kraig, go ahead, bud.
Yeah, just one more quick question, because I know you do have more finals left yet, or are you done for the week?
No, I've finished them all.
Yeah,
Chris Kramer needs to be quiet.
Chris Kramer putting us on blast. All these fans are like, yeah, Chris, these guys are bugging him. And, you know, we've been efforting, you know, you were nice enough to agree in the scrimmage, and we've had some different correspondence. So, you know, as I've always said, we appreciate the time you give us, and we're never going to over ask or push or anything, and never take anything personally if you can't or don't want to do it. We can understand if you don't, because Bobby, I mean, look at him. He looks like a hostage. It's like a hostage situation hanging out with us. But No, I'm kidding. Bobby loves us.
I enjoy your guys' company a little bit.
Yeah, he has no choice. He's just on here because he wants to hear my thoughts on if the Cubs are going to get a shortstop or not. But we do appreciate your time. Go ahead, Kraig.
Man, I forgot what I was going to ask now. Yeah, real quick. 2 questions real quick. The first one's real simple. What's your college major, Fletcher?
I'm in organizational leadership.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And then the second thing, I was kind of thinking about this during the Duke game. So, I mean, a lot's has been made of Zach. And when you look at like recruiting rankings, Zach was like in the 400s or something when he was in high school. But Braden Smith on like the 247 composite was like 195 or something like that. You were maybe high 90s, I think, or something like that. So when you're playing a team like Duke that's got 4 or 5 guys that were top 40, top or higher than that guys, is there a little bit of chip on your guys' shoulder of like, hey, or do you guys just really not even pay attention to those recruiting rankings?
I mean, coming in as freshmen, it's a little bit in your head. Obviously, those guys were ranked in top 15, top 10. But really now that it's college basketball, no one really cares. Like I doubt the older guys, I doubt Mason knew what some of those guys were ranked, so they don't really care. They're going out there to beat Duke. And I think that's been huge for us. And obviously, Coach Painter doesn't care as he's recruited Zach in the 400s and Braden's in the high 100s. So he's just found the right guys, and that's been very impressive to me for his system, what he's got to do. And he's got what he has planned in the back of his head, and it's worked pretty good so far. So really just trusting him and us going out there. We're not going out there to beat a top 20 player. We're going out there to beat Duke. So really just focusing on that.
I know Purdue fans, Purdue fans kind of have this blue collar, work hard mentality to them, and they love it when they see you guys go out and wipe top 20 guys.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Bobby?
I was going to mention you mentioned, no, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, you mentioned, playing Davidson on Saturday and we were joking about Chris Kramer, but he is known for locking down the greatest, player, one of the greatest players in NBA history, so nothing, no pressure, nothing to live up to, but, lock down your brother. If Chris can lock down Steph Curry, but your brother can pour him in. So, he's like that new era Steph Curry at Davidson. So I know we're all excited about the matchup on Saturday. Go ahead, Bobby. I don't know why.
It's kind of fun. It's kind of funny because the last time, we played Davidson was that game in Indy. That was my senior year. And I got to be Steph Curry in practice that whole week, like in the team. So just the ultimate green light, just literally I could shoot like an air ball from 30 feet and they'd be like, yes, Steph will do that. Like he'll fire from anywhere. So that was a lot of fun. So Fletch, who gets to be Foster this week in practice?
Carson Barrett's been Foster. Yes, he's kind of the guy that plays a little bit of point guard, but also can shoot it. So he's been Foster for the week.
I'm sure he's enjoying having that green light.
Oh, he loves it. He loves it.
Has he done it well? Is he doing he doing a good impersonation?
Oh yeah, Carson can get buckets. So when he's scoring on us, he'll talk some smack too. So we really focus up so he can't talk to us about that.
One other thing for you, Fletch. I was really impressed, end of regulation against Nebraska. Braden with one of those great passes. It's probably why you missed it. Braden with one of those classic great passes where he's like in traffic and just whips it over his shoulder to you in the corner. You have that good look. It doesn't fall for you. We come back in overtime, and it looked like, Coach Paint called your number a couple times, basically with some action at the top of the key, and you responded in some critical moments when we were down 1 point both times. How much confidence did you have to be able to, I'm sure it gave you a lot of confidence that he called your number, but I know you're a confident guy in general, but that had to feel good to be able to come through in those moments, I'm sure, after you weren't able to make that shot at the end of regulation.
Yeah, like I've said this whole time, really just focus on winning. And I honestly shocked myself when I missed that shot. I thought I was going to make it, but really then him having the confidence in me helped a tremendous amount, calling those few plays for me. But it happened in the Hofstra game too. I think I started off like 0 for 4, and then he calls a play for me and I ended up getting a layup. So really just having coaches and teammates that trust you is very helpful. And I've noticed that, especially these last few months getting started with the year. And I can't imagine what it'd be like without that. So really just all the credit to them, as they trust me just as much as I trust myself to go out there and do what I can to help the team win.
Yeah, and you're doing a great job of that. As that was the picture or the video of your first ever official 3-point made at Mackey Arena, and of your Purdue career. A lot of 3-pointers to hit in your future. Speaking of the future, you got Davidson this Saturday, a few non-conference games, and then you get into Big Ten play. After playing Minnesota and Nebraska, and I'm sure everybody's kind of warned you, like Big Ten play is a totally different animal than even playing the likes of Gonzaga and Duke, and how much of a grind week to week, 2 games a week, road home, sometimes, 2 road games in a row. How prepared do you feel like you are for that grind in this full season all the way till March? And, how high are you setting your expectations for yourself and the team here going forward now that you've gotten an idea of what you guys are all about?
Yeah, I definitely think that game at Nebraska gave us a little something to look at coming Big Ten time. So really just focus on coming out strong and playing harder than the other team is what we got to do. And I think no matter what we stay ranked or how the season goes, we're going to go and do that. And we're going to hold each other accountable for that. So really just focus on picking up those huge road wins, and then obviously holding down the home court, but still coming ready to play even though we're at home. And winning the Big Ten championships, what we've talked about all year. It's what we've talked about all summer. And it's what we're going to focus on doing. And then really just preparing ourselves for March, staying strong and stay playing harder than the other teams is what we got to focus on.
Well, we definitely are excited to see you guys, move forward. And we have all the confidence in all of you guys, as a group, because it's been really impressive watching all of you guys play and the coaches doing their thing. You were, Big Ten Freshman of the Week, couple weeks in a row. Most points by a freshman. All the accolades seem to be coming out. I mean, there's a great picture of you and Zach they put up on the Purdue social. So it's been a lot of fun, and it really feels like you guys are really connected as a team, not just offensively and defensively, but just as a group together. So as Purdue fans, that's a lot of fun to watch. And I know Purdue fans are excited to see what you guys can do here going forward. So we're going to let you go. We're going to stay true to our word with Chris, because he's going to crack us down if we kept you too long tonight. Hope I haven't been bugging you too much, as far as trying to effort to bring you on. I know a lot of viewers and everybody were excited to hear what you had to say. Just so happened you had a huge week, and Purdue, getting to number 1. So we really appreciate you carving out some time here to hop on and talk about everything that's transpired, and maybe way down the road, I'll leave you alone. I promise, Fletcher, you won't hear from me again other than when we're yelling in the stands. But hopefully maybe sometime going forward, we'll bring you back on.
For sure. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate you, and best of luck going forward.
Have a good one. Boiler up.
Boiler up. Hammer down. That's Fletcher Loyer, sharpshooting, passing, 3 levels of offense, defense, doing it all for your Purdue Boilermakers. We appreciate him coming on tonight. Finals are over, Chris. Okay, so he's not going to fail.
His finals are over.
His finals are over.
Finals week goes through Saturday.
I'm not worried about the rest of the school. I was being threatened by Chris Kramer, our previous guest here last week. If he was failing finals, it was going to be my fault. So now we just got to make it through Saturday. And they get the dub before, I have somebody on Twitter blaming it on me for this interview. So
it was 2-part. It was pass your finals and
beat his brother. I'm like, why is
it's got to happen on Saturday, or you're not off the hook, bro.
Good Lord, let us Purdue fans interview the guys. If Barstool's gonna hop in when the gravy train gets rolling in March, we're gonna get the bite of the apple first. We're the loyalists here in Mackey. So Bobby, we won't go too long here because I know everybody's got work tomorrow, and late night interview. Wanted to put the kids to bed first. So, but Bobby, what are your thoughts going into Saturday? I think there's a lot of Purdue fans with a little bit of nervous energy. It's going to be the first time the Purdue Boilermakers play in the state of Indiana as the number 1 team in the country, because as we all know, last year their number 1 ranking was short-lived. The first game they were ranked, they lost to the Rutgers on the road on a half-court bank shot miracle throw by Ron Harper Jr., and they actually did win a game against NC State later that week as number one, but that was also on the road. So by the time they came back home, they were, dethroned as number one in the country. So now fast forward to this weekend, playing Davidson, the Loyer brothers facing off. It's a neutral court, quote unquote, but there's going to be nothing but Boiler fans there on Saturday. What should Boiler fans expect going into this matchup? Davidson 6-1. Foster Loyer certainly can pour it in. They had a really good run at the end of last season. I think they played Michigan State at the end of last year, and they gave them. Yeah, that was a great game, and Foster gave them all they could handle. So they're no pushover for certain. What are your expectations and your thoughts going into this game?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a good game. I think Davidson will certainly give us a test. I think I saw, some of those mid-major top 25 rankings that they released. I saw Davidson is included in those and has been included in those most of the season. So they got some players. There's players everywhere. Davidson is one of those high-level mid-major programs, and led by Foster Loyer, who's been one of the best players in the country this year, along with our Zach Edey. As far as on some of those lists where it shows like the most impactful players, Foster is pretty high up on that list. So he's been incredible for Davidson, and it's a super neat story, of course, with how great he's been for Davidson and how impactful Fletcher's been for us. So to have the two brothers squaring off in kind of a first time situation, because they, were always far enough apart where they never played high school ball together. Foster able to play this fifth year, utilize his COVID year, has allowed them to be in college at the same time. And then for them to be on the same schedule, pretty crazy, pretty fun story. And, I think when the game was first announced after the Crossroads Classic was over, I'm sure a lot of fans were a little bummed at first because Davidson, even though a really good mid-major program, isn't some high-level, big-time high-major program. And obviously, those type of games are the more exciting matchups. But I think Purdue reaching that number one status in the country prior to this game certainly will help draw some additional fans that maybe weren't as interested earlier in the year. So the fact that you got the Loyer brothers matchup along with the number one team in the country rolling into Indy, it's pretty exciting stuff. So hopefully we have a packed house with obviously a home court advantage essentially down in Indy.
Definitely. And Matt Wright and a few other people in the chat saying how much they enjoy the interview. We appreciate you tuning in. We're going to do these, as much as we can. We all have full-time jobs, but when we can fit them in and get them in, we're going to try to have some fun and cover Purdue basketball. We're there for the games credentialed every week. And obviously Bobby's there calling the games. He isn't forced to come on, but Bobby's nice enough to join us and help us out with these each and every time. And you are always welcome, Bobby. I'll put you on payroll eventually. But I see Mike in the chat. He's talking about the tension, from last year. Now it's like it somewhat starts to become a normalcy that they're number one in the country. I mean, but for freshmen, this is the first time they're going to feel that kind of pressure. I mean, even as number 4 going to Nebraska, like Fletcher mentioned, we kind of learned a little bit about Big Ten play, but probably also being the hunted, because Nebraska's fans are never that fired up for a game. It feels like when you play there, and they were fully engaged. And I think as Purdue, the longer they stay as number one, the more it's going to feel like they're playing a Super Bowl against every team week in and week out. What do you think, and we asked Fletcher this, but how much do you think Painter and the coaching staff and the players learned, the ones that were here last year, Mason Gillis, Zach Edey, Brandon Newman, Ethan Morton, and so on? What do you think they learned from last year's experiences of being the hunted, and now they're back in that position?
Sure. I mean, I think probably just that thought of, okay, we can't sleepwalk through any game because we're going to get the opposition's best, effort that particular evening. It felt like last year, when you got that crooked number next to your name, particularly obviously in the Rutgers case, the number 1 ranking, I mean, you're going to get everyone's best shot. And Nebraska, not having the greatest year, but certainly probably improved from years past. But when you have a top 5 team come into your building, you're going to have great fan support for that game, and you're going to get a team that's revved up and ready to go and try to make a statement for their resume. And when you get a high ranking next to your name, like we had last year and then this year, every team you play, I mean, they're going to try to get a huge resume win. You know, they're trying to make the NCAA tournament. They're trying to get a high seed, high ranking in their own right. And if they can beat you, that's going to be a, big feather in their cap. So that's what those guys probably learned last year, is that we got to be locked in, ready to go from the jump against every single team we play, because we're not going to get some team that's just sleepwalking, not really ready to go when you're playing a top 5 team in the country. That's just human nature. And so our guys got to be ready to bring their A game every night, which is easier said than done.
Now, we mentioned, with Fletcher, Zach Edey now not only facing the pressure of being on a number 1 team in the country and being the hunted, but he's right now the favorite to win National Player of the Year. And we saw in Nebraska a team finally, try their best to get him out of the game. And the funny thing is his expectation level is so high that, 17 rebounds and 7 blocks and, double figures in points is hit a down game for him. But at the same time, they did bracket him quite a bit, try to keep him off the boards as best they could. He's yet to get in foul trouble, which has been really surprising to me. He played 43 minutes against Nebraska in an overtime game and still didn't sniff foul trouble. So I don't know how that's even possible when you consider how fast he would get in foul trouble last year. But, now going forward, how do you think Zach Edey will navigate through Big Ten play this year? Because last year he dominated early on, and it was like, wow, how are these guys going to stop him? And then Big Ten play came along like it does, and it's a grind for everyone. Doesn't matter if you're 10 feet tall. And it was a grind for Zach Edey. And as the year went on, teams started to slow him down more and more. How much do you think Zach Edey has learned personally, and how much do you think he'll be able to rise above the game plans that are being planned against him?
Yeah, certainly he's, getting to the point now in his career where he's starting to see pretty much anything that can be thrown at him. Nebraska played kind of a relatively unique style that he probably hadn't seen too much in the past, as far as not necessarily doubling like on the catch like a lot of teams do, and they did do that a little bit, but they, more than other teams, just sat their guy who was on the weak side, just like sat him in Zach's lap. Essentially, like basically we're double teaming him prior to even the pass going in a lot of times. And, that was certainly probably something new for him to try to navigate. But you can just tell the more games he plays, the more experience he's getting, the better he's getting at both offensively and defensively. And, Ethan was joking with me after the game. He was like, yeah, I told Zach, you're unfortunately probably going to see similar looks to that like that for a while until we start, making some of these perimeter jump shots at a higher percentage. And, obviously that was one of the unfortunate things about Nebraska, is we missed a lot of very makeable open shots that we'll hopefully, start making in the future. And I think we will. I think if we keep getting looks like that, we're going to make teams pay. And there could be some avalanches that take place for the opposition if they want to take that, stance defensively, because you keep letting guys of the quality shooters we have shoot horse shots. You're going to pay for it eventually. So hopefully that starts happening early and often. But I think it's a testament to our team this year that we're able to win a game like that when we don't shoot the ball well from the free throw line or the 3-point line. Zach's not able to get a lot of field goal attempts, but we are able to score in some other ways, mid-range, around the rim, and then have quality enough defense to hold a Nebraska team down on their home court, in the 50s and allow us to win that game in overtime. So that's what's been nice thing about this year's team, is I think this team is able to win maybe in some different varieties of ways, maybe compared to last year's team, which, last year's team, the defensive struggles, were there pretty much the whole year. There were some pockets of good defense on occasion, but I'm not sure as a whole the team was as locked in defensively possession by possession as maybe this year's team is, which has been a welcome change. And I think, Zach certainly has taken his game to another level defensively as far as his rim protection goes. And I think that's covered up, a lot of breakdowns that we may have throughout a game. And yeah, it's his rim protection's been really fun to watch. Like he had that foul last game where he actually tried to swipe down and he got the clean block, but then he followed through and hit the guy. And Coach Painter was yelling at him, like, just go straight up, like just wall up. And because that reminded me of a time in the Duke game when Mark Mitchell for Duke drove baseline, that talented small forward they had, and he tried to like dunk on Zach, and Zach just went straight up with the wall. And Mark Mitchell basically like bounced off a brick wall, and the ball was like a turnover or a block shot. We went the other way. So if Zach continues to just, be that wall at the rim, it's going to lead to a lot of defensive stops for Purdue.
And real quick, and then I'll let Kraig fire away with you real quick before we sign off. But Matt Painter mentioned how they were the way they were guarding Zach off rebounds, where they're face guarding him and not even facing the rim and just pushing Zach out of the pushing Zach.
It was an illegal defense, but
right.
When we say people are going to guard Edey like Nebraska did, I'm sure Painter probably sent in some clips and was like, "Hey, this isn't legal, right?"
Yeah, on the rebounding is what he's talking about. As far as like, you can't just like offensive tackle, two hands to somebody's chest to try to keep them from getting to the rim. You have to at some point turn your back. Like you can start out that way, obviously, like make an initial contact, but then you have to turn. You can't just stay there.
It's like a defensive back in football. Like you can guard your man, but then once the ball is in the air, you have to turn around and make a play on the ball.
So to avoid getting those foul calls, like the one they called that they did call in the game, I watched it back too. And and Derek Walker is just hands to chest, Zach's chest, the entire time the rebound is, basically you can probably get away with it as long as you either disengage or turn your back by the time the ball is coming off of the rim. Because they probably won't call it while the shot is like in the air. But once that ball comes off the rim and guys are starting to move for the basketball, if you're engaged like that, the refs should call it. And even though it sounds like, according to Coach Painter, they missed it multiple times. So, hopefully teams aren't getting away with that sort of box out treatment on Zach because it's illegal for the rules. But Zach is certainly going to see all kinds of methods to try to stop him because he's just 7'4", 300 and really skilled. And so hopefully his success can lead to other players' success because of the attention he's going to draw. And I love, as Fletcher pointed out, I love that he's not a black hole. There's so many guys that are talented post players that are just, once I get the ball, it's going up no matter what. And his ability to be unselfish and kick the ball out time and time again, or be simple. And if it's one-on-one, make the right play and score. If I'm doubled, find a guy like that, Mason, for a layup. He's been really impressive in that regard. And I think that's what makes it so dangerous as a team is you don't have a guy as a black hole down there who's a selfish player.
Yeah, the passing has been impressive. But like in that Nebraska game, what they were doing there multiple times illegally on the box out, so much of Zach's, I mean, not the majority, but a lot of Zach's points come off of those offensive rebounds, tip backs, dunk backs, whatever, that essentially I call them illegal defense because it leads to offense for us so many times. And they were, doing something they should not have been able to do, I guess. Painter mentioned Butler used to do that a lot too, I guess, back in the day. Never noticed it before, but
I saw that. I would do it in a rebound war during practice because that's the only chance I had to keep some of these dudes off the glass. But you're right. I mean, Zach's probably the best offensive rebounder in the country. I know some of those offensive rebound statistics. He's always been up there year in and year out. So as you pointed out, sometimes a missed shot is our best shot. I mean, how many times do Braden or Fletcher, if they get in there, even if they just throw it up off the glass because they're drawing Zach's help side defender, if they throw it up high enough, even though maybe it has a small chance to go in, as long as that thing gets above the shot blocker's hand, there's a good chance Zach is going to put it away.
Yeah, there was a drive in that Nebraska game where it honestly looked like Braden realized he wasn't going to get a shot off and just like kind of looked to where Zach was and threw it off the backboard to where he was.
Yeah, I was actually going to joke with Fletcher. I was thinking about bringing it up to Fletcher when we had him on because I asked him at shoot around. So in our game against Hofstra at home, Fletcher drove one time and like it was one of those like, okay, the help side defender's coming, Zach's man, and Fletcher just like fired this layup attempt off the glass, like rifled it. And I was like, I think I said it on the air. I was like, I'm pretty sure Fletch was trying to pass that, like a pass off the glass to Zach.
Right.
I was like, we talked about Fletcher's finishing ability, his finesse, and all this stuff. I was like, he fired that thing. Fletch is never going to shoot it that. Like, Fletch isn't that bad to where he's just going to rifle it like that. And I asked him, I was like, dude, you were passing that, right? He was like, yeah, I actually was. And then Terry Johnson walked by and was like, yeah, that's not going to happen again.
Yeah, but why not? I mean, maybe not that deliberate, but like you said with the Braden one against Nebraska, it's like throw it up on the rim. You know your guys are going to follow you. You know, when you're driving, guys are crashing to you, and you know that Zach is following the play. So you just throw it up to the rim. If it goes in, great. If it doesn't, the big man's going to clean it up. Yeah, I mean,
there's in theory that play could probably have more success than many people may realize, I suppose. But obviously, it's a risky play if you're not putting any effort to try to make the shot, because of course the benefit of trying to make the shot would be you have 2 chances to score, I suppose, if you give a good effort to score, or because Zach's so good at offensive rebounding, he can put it back. If it's a soft miss, like they're perfect example there. But it's funny that I think Fletch Fletch had a lot of his shots blocked at Florida State near the rim because they had that really good 7'4" shot blocker. I think in that Hofstra game, he kind of had one of the situations where maybe he panicked a little bit and was like, I don't want to get my shot blocked, and just rifled it off the glass. So I was joking with him and thought it was funny that he actually was like, yeah, I tried to pass that. But it's definitely a weapon for Purdue to get into the teeth of the defense. And even if those guys struggle to finish or are unable to finish, as long as they don't get their shot blocked out of bounds, there's a great chance Zach or even one of our other power forwards, if they're whoever's in the game, can finish.
Hey, Bobby, much to Kraig's chagrin, we're not going to go undefeated this year. It's going to happen. Like, even though he, sometimes he'll text and be like, I don't think we're going to lose. And I'm like, dude, slow down.
We can always
I get excited.
We've got what looks like a manageable stretch until January. But then when January hits, we get Rutgers at Ohio State, at Penn State, Nebraska at home, at Michigan State. Of those 5 games, which one perks your ears up the most of, maybe that one may be a tough one?
Well, of course, Rutgers is looming, right? Like, of course, they have
right.
That's looming.
That team.
with that game in Mackey,
I love their players. Like, I hate Rutgers because of what they've done to us. But like, I friggin' loved Harper Jr., Geo Baker, Mulcahy, McConnell. Like, I love those guys. Like, if they were my guys, I would love them.
Oh yeah. I felt it's funny because even though they gave us so much heartbreak last year, I do enjoy watching them play. I like Coach Peichel. I like their system. I like how hard they play. I was impressed with the rack or Jersey Mike's Arena, I think it's called, when we were there last year. And like you said, their players are likable players as far as how they play. And so, I felt bad for them when they had that tough ending against Ohio State earlier. And then I guess they had a tough ending the other night too, I think, in their game. I think, did they lose a close one to Seton Hall? I think it was. The other night.
Did they really? Wow, I missed that.
Yeah, I guess there was a potential bad call late in that game too. But
of course,
Ohio State one was
coached by St. Peter's former coach, Kraig. If you didn't know that.
Yeah. So that game is looming, which is just funny, of course. But that game is played in Mackey Arena and not Jersey Mike's Arena. So even though I like their team, and I think that will be a very tough game for us because they will pressure us man to man and give us fits. Because that game's in the friendly confines, I'm not maybe as worried in that as far as that group. Certainly in that group of games you listed, I would choose a road game probably first and foremost. And I gotta say, probably the Buckeyes. I think they got a talented team. Got some interesting players. Sensabaugh is a pretty talented freshman, so it'd be fun to see him square off against our talented freshman. And then Zegke's a pretty quality low post scorer. He's kind of similar to Derek Walker as far as can score right hand, left hand, a little undersized.
YMCA game. Sorry.
Yes, YMCA. Yeah, he can really those jump hooks with either hand. He's a talented low post scorer. Certainly scoring over 7-4 will be more difficult with Zach than maybe some of the other players he goes against. But that game intrigues me for sure. That's been a place that Purdue hasn't played very well in over the years as well. So
yeah, I tell you, the one that makes me perk up is that at Penn State game, because the way we play Zach and drop coverage, essentially we dare guards to hit mid-range shots.
Right.
And in my mind, they probably have no offense to our own backcourt, but statistically looking at it, they probably have the best backcourt right now in the Big Ten. And those guys can hit tough shots from anywhere on the court. So that personally is the one that I'm like, the way kind of the just matchup wise, and the fact that they got guards that can go out and hit 24 footers or 10 footers, 8 footers, attack at the rim, whatever. That's and plus Shrewsbury just knowing Painter's system, like that's the one I got circled.
And that was the game. Did you say that was at Penn State?
Yeah. It's after the Ohio State game.
Right after the Ohio State game.
And that game's at the Palestra. So
correct.
It's already sold out. So it's going to be a big time environment. The game's unfortunately at Penn State in their typical arena. The environments aren't that great for the most part, which is unfortunate because I feel like, obviously I like Coach Shrewsbury and I want that program to do well when they're not playing us. And I just see how well that fan base supports their football program. I hope that they'll be able to come around to basketball a little bit more. But the Palestra is going to be rocking. And you're right. They are so small up front. Like they play Seth Lundy at the 5 sometimes. And on a lot of teams, he might play the 3. 4 is probably like would be his best position, but he would play the 3 on some teams and plays the 5 for them like a decent amount. And he obviously ain't checking Big Z, but Zach having to guard Seth Lundy on the perimeter is a problem too. So, and as
which one ends up with the bigger point differential advantage at the end of that game, more or less, right? Where Painter always says, well, yeah, that guy's got the advantage on the offensive end, but Zach also has the advantage on our offensive end, and which one asserts their will throughout the game. I need to see a Joe Jackson breakdown thread of plays leading into that game. I don't know if you follow him on Twitter or not, Bobby.
Yeah, he's a great follow. Yeah. Because it'll be interesting if they go with a lineup like that. We might try to go cross match, and they usually do have a lot of shooters. They got Pickett, Funk, Dredd. Those guys are all shooters.
Funk at Illinois was unconscious, just throwing them up.
Because Morty will probably guard Pickett, and so you probably got Fletch or Braden, probably Fletcher on. That'll be it. Because I was thinking what they might do would be like a cross match where Zach. I'm trying to think who their 5th starter is. It's that point guard. He's a number 11, I think, is the point guard. But he's not a
Tony Pickett.
No, or there's another guard. I think Wyatt. Is it Wyatt? They have another guard who starts too, I think. They play like a 4-guard lineup and then Lundy, if I recall.
Hey, Joe's listening. Look that stuff up,
Joe. Joe's our research guy.
Where's our research?
Joe, he's in the chat.
Winners. He was already on it.
I said Wyatt, but it was Winters. Yeah. So
can we just make Joe like our background research guy during the show?
Send him the link so he can, help us carry the load here. We appreciate you, Joe.
So I don't think Winters is like a super big time shooter. So, maybe they would do something crazy and just have Zach guard him. But yeah, who knows? It'll be an interesting chess match there.
Well, we just started for CHGO. We just started a Big Ten show on Tuesday nights. We do Bears After Dark on Tuesday and Thursdays for Chicago Bears coverage. But when the football season's over, I mentioned them like, hey, let's keep After Dark rolling with some college basketball. It'll lead us all the way into March. And I, obviously have a lot of passion for Big Ten basketball, and there's a lot of people at the studio that do as well. And so, part of this betting show, that's what we asked was they asked me who do I think the first loss is going to come from? And after watching Penn State at Illinois, I was right there with you guys. That's the game I pinpointed because after Rutgers, Ohio State, then your second back-to-back road games from Ohio State, then Penn State, now you're starting to get into the gauntlet, and you're only going to, I always say you only have so many bullets in a season, and you have to use those bullets to win you the miracle games. They've already used one now in the Nebraska game. You only have a 6-round chamber you don't have 15 bullets. Once you've used up your luck, they're it's like bullet luck, and to me, once you get into Big Ten play, you're not going to be able to fire all them bullets every week to get you out of the miracle wins. So now you get into the gauntlet, and that's the one I circled was the Penn State game. For what Kraig said, Micah Shrewsbury really knows how to game plan against us. No, they don't have the John Harrar who was giving us a lot of problems. So that, leaves me some pause. But at the same time, like you guys mentioned, their guards are so good. They can hit shots from anywhere, but they're so physical and big. And Fletcher and Braden, they do everything they can. And Fletcher was, I like that he brought up how long Braden's arms are. I've never really thought of that as why he's such a good defender. But at the same time, these guys from Penn State will back you down and post you up and do a little turnaround jumper like we saw with the guy from Wisconsin all year last year. So, Davis, so that's their potential. So I think that's a game to pinpoint. But, they're going to lose games. And that's why for me, I was like, they were so close to the number 1 ranking. And maybe they'll stay in the top 10 all year like they did last year, which is a great thing for any program. But to get to number 1 is few and far between. They're going to lose games this year, and they may not have another opportunity going through that Big Ten gauntlet to carry this number 1 ranking, maybe all the way through the rest of the month of December and into Big Ten play. That's a huge thing for a program, as long as they can get that done here on Saturday.
I think if we played in Gonzaga's conference, we would be a number 1 seed for sure.
Amen, Bobby. The Gonzaga people are quiet. When we played Gonzaga,
you are not going to let this go. Like Bobby was on the Gonzaga slam chain last year.
Nope, we're not going to let it go.
We're losing the WAC this year.
Oh my God! And when we got to play them, I was like literally salivating.
Now that we beat them, like Bobby's going to hang on to this.
Oh man,
for all time.
In all seriousness, so that has worked in Gonzaga's favor as far as like if they do a good job in non-conference like we did this year, then they do have that.
Get Robbie Hummel back on here so we can bash him for his Gonzaga love, because we were right about this. And they played us, and Purdue beat the brakes off them. And now they have no shot at a number 1 seed. I was talking to Brian Tonsoni, our guy from Delphi Bracketology, and he also does Assembly Call, a good friend of ours of the show. And, he said that right now Purdue's a number 1 seed. And I should ask him. I don't think there's any chance Gonzaga can get up to the 1 seed. Normally they get grandfathered into the 1 seed every year because they don't play anybody for 3 months after out of conference play or after non-conference play. So yeah, so happy that we got to beat them. The last question I had for you, Bobby, and then we'll let you get to bed and we'll wrap this thing up. The one thing I've been meaning to ask you, and we haven't, talked for a little bit, is in the Florida State game at the very end, you're right there. You get to hear Painter yelling at these guys and all the different things. And I just thought it was a hilarious moment when Braden Smith decides, I can't exactly remember. I think he went to the rim when they were.
I know the play you're asking
about. They're up. Purdue's up. You just need to run the clock out. And he's going to the rim like a bat out of hell. And Painter said something to Braden Smith that made the entire sidelines laugh. I see you on the telecast cracking up. The ref is cracking up as they're inbounding the ball. Can you give us any kind of details as far as what was said and everything that transpired there?
Yeah, I mean, it was a culmination of things a little bit too in that game, because you guys may recall at the end of the first half, Purdue got the ball with, I think it was 25 seconds or something like that. And Braden was kind of pushing up the floor, and coach was yelling like, pull it out, one shot, last shot of the half. And Braden drove in. I think, not sure, he must either not heard coach or, saw a seam and instincts took over or whatever. But I think he ended up fumbling the ball, and we ended up not getting the last shot of the half, and Florida State ended up getting, I believe, the last shot of the half. And so that had happened. So in the second half, yes, it was late in the game. Coach wanted to run clock. Braden was kind of pushing it up, beating the press, I think. And, once he got it into the front court, there was really nobody in front of him. And Coach Painter and Elliot Bloom and the entire staff was basically yelling for him to pull the ball out. And he started driving it again. And they were just freaking out and yelling for him to pull it out. And I think he finally did, if I recall, kick it out. And then there was a foul or something. And Elliot goes to Coach Painter. He's like, you got to tell him to pull it out. He's like, Coach Painter was like, what do you think I was telling him? And so the whole bench was just up in arms about trying to get Braden to slow his roll a little bit. So I was, basically reading lips, and sometimes with the headphones, sometimes it's hard to hear everything they're saying clearly, but they were yelling so loud I could even hear through that. So I was just dying laughing because luckily nothing bad happened, and I could just see how crazy the bench was going, trying to get this man to slow down and pull the ball out. So
it's funny.
Yeah,
Braden's probably lucky because No Gel and Carson and Jaden came through this program before him and maybe taught Painter a little patience with some of these guys that go rogue like Braden likes to, because I know he's probably gotten a few gray hairs from some of those, but I just thought that interaction was really funny.
Yeah, I really think. Go ahead, Bobby.
I was just gonna say it's funny. I've had a number of people bring up that moment to me because I guess I was behind Coach Painter laughing.
Oh yeah, the telecast was hilarious. I'd share it. I should have taken like a screenshot picture of it, but I try to avoid pulling up too much cover or footage that doesn't belong to me. But it was a very funny moment.
Stalking me from home.
Yeah, no stalking from home. Although we did get that one picture of you that the boiler suit guys, they shared the video of the fans cheering Purdue coming in after they beat Gonzaga or Duke, and you had a really funny smile on your face. I should have brought that photo here, but I didn't. That's okay. Yeah, not much stalking going on so far. I'm slacking on my stalking game so far, but don't worry, it's coming. I promise I'm gonna have some stalking for you. What did you have one more thing, Kraig?
Yeah, Bobby, did you listen to the radio show?
I did.
I know where you're going. Brian from Rensselaer had nothing to say.
Is that you, Kraig, with a different voice or something?
Did you hear that guy call in and not ask a question, but offer advice to Matt Painter on how he should be running his offense?
Him and his tailgating team.
I gotta know. I almost sent you a text and was like, "Hey, can we get Rob Blackman to come on? Because I have to ask him about this." And Blackman is doing. He's lowering his head and then he's covering his mouth, trying to quit from. And you can hear everybody during the show that's there live laughing in the background. But we're ranked number 1 in Ken Palm offense, and you get some random guy calling in and being like, "I think this is what you need to do offensively, Coach Painter."
I know
need more driving kicks. Come on, Matt. Jeez, why didn't he think of that?
It's wild. People are never satisfied, of course. People always want improvement. And so even if you're number 1, you can still get that efficiency number higher. So, that guy was Paint's response just had me rolling because he gave a semi-serious response. And then at the end was like, good question.
No, that's the funniest thing was at the end, he gets done and he pauses for just a second. And then he's like, great question, though.
Yeah. Paint's sarcasm at times is hilarious. So.
Yeah. I avoided and tried my best to avoid any dumb questions when we had Painter on, for our show here to start the year. The one thing I would say, I'm not, I think Matt Painter's the best coach in the country, and our guy Ant Wright, who one of these days we'll have him come on and he can make fun of me for this, take some more. But I think he is the best coach in the country. And his rebuttal to that was, well, recruiting is a part of coaching, in college basketball. I'm like, well, he's doing a pretty damn good job of recruiting too, because he's running circles around these programs that get, hand gifted, NBA talent every year. And he's finding the guys that the recruits don't see, that don't understand the game as well as Matt Painter does, and finds the guys in the mid 100s or 200s or even 300s and turns them into potential national players of the year. So I think he's very slick in recruiting. No, he doesn't get the gold star recruits, but he also they develop better than anybody in the country. His systems that he runs are as intricate as anybody's in the country. And just the way he manages his players and his personality and the things he says about being honest with his, players and coaches and everything. And like you said, the interaction there where Braden messed up, he has a sense of humor to it all. The one thing I go back and forth on all the time is how he handles the refs, because I feel like, I'm biased. So I'm watching the game and I want Purdue to get every call. But, I think there's times where Zach Edey's getting, just fouled every time down the court. That's right. Brian and Rensselaer. Yeah, that's right.
I just had to show this because I have no idea how somebody thought that's the way to spell Rensselaer, but I see Mike. It was a good try. I see Mike.
No, but I was glad to see Painter because a lot of times he's pretty calm. Like I'm sure he's saying things as the refs go by. I know it's more subtle. He's not like Brad Underwood or Fran from Iowa. Like his classic Fran moment the other day against Wisconsin was hilarious. I don't expect Matt to ever be like that. He's not that type of guy. But when Zach, like Kraig was saying, they're going to send the tape in about the way they're guarding him on rebounds. Well, when they get to the tournament, a tape a week later does you no good. So I like at some point, I like when Matt, he's got to use some of his cachet. You know, he to me is John Calipari on that side. He deserves that kind of respect from the refs. So he can flex on them a little bit. And in the game, at one point, the whole coaching staff, including Matt, got on the refs, and the very next play down, they got the call. And I hope there's a little more. I know he's never going to push that envelope, but that is, and you know, I'm not going to call in as Brian from Rensselaer and give this advice to Matt on the Matt Painter show, but that is one thing I like in the moment, in those big moments, maybe not during the season, but certainly when we get into a freaking dog rock fight, you know, in the tournament, you got to use your cachet right then and there and get on these guys. Because these refs, sometimes they'll let them do whatever they want to Zach Edey. And last year with Travion Williams, and I find it unacceptable, Bobby.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's the eye of the beholder, you know, as far as how they want their coach to act on the sidelines. But, you know, because I feel like I've probably only seen Coach Paint like lose it. Maybe probably count on one hand the number of times I've seen him like fully lose it. I can't imagine he's got too many technicals over his career at Purdue.
Has he been thrown out of a game? I've never seen it.
Maybe one. I think he got thrown out of one game, but I am, you know, I'm biased, but I do like his demeanor. I feel like he chooses the right times to really get on the refs when he feels there was a blatant call missed, and he's passionate about that. And I feel like if there's 50-50 calls that he's not sure about, you know, he might give his side, but he's not going to go over the top, super emphatic, crazy about something that, you know, he's not for sure about. So, yeah, I think Paint's definitely, you know, getting some, you know, growing his in respect as far as his career goes as a coach. And as you point out, you know, some people think these rankings don't matter, yada, yada. But, you know, if you keep getting ranked number one in the country year in and year out, like you're going to grow in prestige as a coach, and your program is going to grow in prestige. And who knows, maybe you start to get some of those 50-50 calls, or some refs treat you differently. You know, when you're Duke and playing in a game and feel like Zachy's getting fouled and they're not calling it. You know, I feel like last year, coach all the time was like, Zach's getting hammered. And sometimes the refs would call more fouls and sometimes they wouldn't. So that's why it is nice to continually to impress in the rankings each year, because those refs are human beings and they see your program at that position. And maybe Coach Painter will continue to get additional love from the officials for having a high ranking.
Yeah, definitely. So, all right. Well, you know, anything else that sticks out before you go, you know, any impressions, you know, quick impressions you have with the rest of the Big Ten? You know, I'm sure we probably won't talk, you know, through the holiday season and as we get into Big Ten play. So anything that's standing out to you? Do you think Michigan's going to keep being terrible, or do you think they're going to have a resurgence, or anything, you know, any quick thoughts you have as far as the rest of the Big Ten?
I will just say, like, as a whole, you know, I think I kind of live in this Big Ten bubble. You know, I try to follow, you know, the whole college basketball world nationally, of course, but I definitely live in the Big Ten bubble to some degree. And so, you know, coming into the season, I think I thought this, and a lot of people around the country thought that the Big Ten was going to be down in general, just because of how much talent we lost from our conference, particularly the 3 guys in the lottery, and then a number of other players to graduation or leaving to the NBA. And maybe it just felt like such a big deal because typically the Big Ten maybe doesn't lose as many high-profile players each year, particularly in the lottery, whereas all the other some of those other major conferences, of course, lose high-level guys to the NBA year in and year out or to graduation. So maybe it just felt like the Big Ten was losing more than the other conferences. But what I've been impressed with as the season's unfolded to this point is how well the Big Ten's performed. And maybe I had overestimated or underestimated how many, other talented players the rest of the conference is, lost as well. And so I've been impressed with how well the Big Ten has performed and how many quality teams there are. And I think there's a number of teams that are going to be able to vie for that Big Ten championship. And I think it's going to be a really fun race. Certainly Purdue's put itself in a good spot starting out 2-0, and some of its competitors who I think will be competing with them in the end for the championship have already accumulated some losses along the way to this point. So I think that's a great start for Purdue as far as the long game goes. But I think this Big Ten is going to be a really fun season, a lot of parity and a lot of, even the bottom, like Nebraska is going to beat people. Penn State's going to beat people. Rutgers is going to beat people. Even Northwestern went to Michigan State and got a win. It's going to be, there's no, some years there is some off nights. Like, I'm not sure, trying to think who else would be.
Minnesota is still an off night.
Yeah. Minnesota, it'd probably be the one right now that.
But even who'd they beat? Somebody came to Minnesota and they beat somebody of note, right?
Maybe in the Big Ten AC Challenge or something, but winning in the barn is not, is never easy necessarily. And Jamison Battle and Dawson Garcia are talented enough to where if you catch them on the wrong night and you don't play well, like if Purdue plays as poorly as we did offensively as we did in Nebraska in a battle and Dawson Garcia are hitting shots left and right, like you could lose that game. So they'll probably get somebody in the barn just because those guys are super talented. But
I'm wrong. They didn't beat anybody. I just like
when you said that, I was like, no.
Yeah, they didn't. They played Michigan. Michigan beat them. But when Minnesota had
Michigan lost their point guard Jalen Llewellyn to a torn ACL, and their guard play was already struggling a little bit. So, we'll see how that affects them moving forward. But, I would think Purdue, Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, Ohio State, Rutgers could be some of those teams vying for the crown.
If you had to guess right now, is Michigan and Michigan State in the tournament?
Did you just leave out IU, Bobby? Did you say Iowa?
No, he said IU.
Okay.
I said IU second.
I thought you did it on purpose. I was excited.
Begrudgingly said them second.
Do you have either of those teams missing the tournament or both?
Which teams?
Michigan and Michigan State.
Michigan.
It's a good question.
Right now.
I think they both have some had Lee calls out right now with the foot. Akins was out for a little bit. Obviously, Llewellyn, as we just spoke about, is out. So, they have a chance to unfortunately accumulate some losses while some of their guys are down. And so time will tell. And neither of those teams were perfect in the non-conference by any means. So,
but MSU got a couple of good wins, whereas Michigan did not. So,
yeah, MSU got Kentucky, and they beat somebody else decent out in Portland, I think.
Yeah.
But,
well, our guy Brian Tonsoni, who does great work with Delphi Bracketology, where they predict who's going to make the tournament. I texted him the other day. He's giving me a cheat sheet for my Big Ten show that we do on CHGO, and he said right now Purdue, Indiana, Illinois, Maryland, Ohio State, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Penn State are in. Maybe Michigan State. And then Rutgers and Michigan are bubble teams. They're close, as he said. And he said Purdue is at a 1 seed as of right now, which is obvious. I mean, they're the number 1 team in the country. But I found that interesting that Michigan and Michigan State are playing from behind right now. And Illinois right now is 0-2 in the Big Ten. They they had a really tough draw for their 2 December games at Maryland, and then Penn State at home upsets them. And so that's huge because Illinois was a favorite to win the Big Ten. And even IU, they lost at Rutgers. Never easy to play at Rutgers. But for those 2 teams that already have 3 losses amongst them, and Purdue be 2-0 before we even get into the official Big Ten play is a nice step in the right direction for this young team. So it'll be interesting to see if Purdue can hold on for dear life and make it through the Big Ten gauntlet. Hopefully not lose many home games, if any at all, and that could set themselves up for to raise some more banners and continue their streak of having the most Big Ten championships in the conference. So and I know they have bigger plans and goals beyond that. So we'll see. But Bobby, I'll let you go, and then me and Kraig will close this thing down. But again, we appreciate all your time, and obviously keep up the great work on your pre and post game shows you do with Rob Blackman. You guys are as good as it gets, and on the calls as always for Purdue men's basketball radio. You guys do a great job. So we appreciate all your time you carve up for us. Have a Merry Christmas. We love you. Thank you for putting up with us, particularly me. Kraig's, easy to put up with, but I know it's much harder for me.
Yeah, Braggs told me the Cubs tickets were coming for Christmas, Bob.
Yeah, well, I was hoping earlier. I was scrolling Twitter just a few minutes ago while Kraig was asking a question just to see if, while we were on, we would get Dansby Swanson. But, of course, that hasn't happened. So I'm not too happy.
Once you sign somebody big time, then you can send me the tickets.
Oh, my God. Well, that might be a little bit. So don't hold your breath. So have a wonderful Christmas with your beautiful family. Thanks, as always, for giving us your time, Bobby.
Thanks, fellas. Thanks for having me on, and happy holidays, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Bobby.
That is Bobby Riddell, Bobby Buckets, our guy, as always, giving us way too much time and love here on Braggs in the Stands, as he always does. So we appreciate everything he does to do that. So, then there were two, me and Kraig. So we're wrapping things up, but there were some questions in the chat for you, and I'm going to have to go back and find it.
Yeah, I got my old college room. This is my old college roommate. He asked me what was in my cup, and that's some fine Brokerage Brewing Company beverages, Justin. A friend of the show and a friend of Braggs and I, and we've done some events there for Boiler Diehards over time. So you called me out, Justin. So yep, that's what's in there.
So yeah, you got the Brokerage, always rocking that. You can give a shout out to Brokerage. I know they're always tuning in, big fans of what we do. So go right ahead.
They push us out on their social media and whatnot. So we got to give them a shout out when we can. So good food, good brews. Lots of Purdue athletic people there too. You never know who you're going to see there. You may run into some coaches of some pretty prominent Purdue teams while you're there.
Yeah, I was
there. You got
there.
some music playing in the background, bro?
Yeah, I put a little well, this is the wrap-up music.
It's like mood music. Like, I don't know it's like kind of jazzy. Like, what's going on here? Like,
something different?
I don't know if I'm into that, man.
Okay. Well, I don't know. Just trying things out. We're late in the show, so you just never know what's going to happen.
Are you going to turn the lights down a little bit too, or what?
This is when things go off the rails. This is when we go past the hour and a half mark. They adding all these new features on StreamYard.
Yeah.
So I'm just playing around with different things.
I like it, man. I like it. Hey, I wanted to hit on when you asked him about
Mike said he's trying to play you off like Night at the Apollo. Get the broom out.
He brought up other Big Ten teams, and he brought up Rutgers, or you brought up Rutgers and Michigan State. I think Rutgers is a really interesting story right now because they were missing both McConnell and McKay at the beginning of the season and lost some games that they would not have lost had they had them. And then they've been really close in some games against some really good teams, but also lost them. Now they've won a couple of good games. But if you look at them on KenPom, I want to say they're like top 30 on KenPom right now. But they're not projected. Like if the tournament would be this weekend, they would not make the tournament because they just haven't won enough games. But like the eye test right now with Amore, Mulcahy, McConnell, the freshman guard that's playing really good. The eye test says they're a top 3 or 4 team in the Big Ten right now.
Right. No, I was surprised when he sent me that as I turn off the music. I tried. We'll try it again. Boilers After Dark. I like that. You never know. But no, I'm a big Rutgers guy. They take down IU. Yeah, it was a home game. They've had some tough losses now. I mean, that Ohio State game, that's bullshit.
That was bullshit. It was an
illegal. It was an amazing shot, but it was illegal. He didn't reestablish himself in bounds. And I get everything happened quick, but how it can't be reviewed is unfortunate and not fair to the Rutgers because, what if they are a bubble team at the end of the year and they don't get in because of something like that? I think that's not right. And, to me, the Rutgers, they finished 4th in the Big Ten last year. It's the highest they've ever finished, and they've made the tournament the last 2 years. It should have been the last 3 years if not for the COVID season. And now this year they look solid once again. So, we'll see what happens. Yeah, was Ohio State on that BS? I agree. So we'll see. But yeah, Joe Jackson, and we appreciate you tuning in, Joe.
He's the stat guru. Like anytime we need a stat, he needs to. Every radio show, Braggs, has that guy that like nobody ever sees on camera that's just firing stats your way. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Joe certainly is a man of many talents. He's breaking down the tape, giving us really good insight on Twitter. Make sure you follow Joe Jackson on there. They've just started their own, podcast that they're putting out there. So make sure you're following along. Joe, if you want to put it, he is a stats major, but and we've had him on as a guest here in one of our most recent shows. So make sure you're following along with Joe because him and his buddy Aiden are doing really, really good work. And, we appreciate all the support he gives. And to be quite honest, if Bobby couldn't have made it tonight, there was a chance I might have just asked Joe to hop on with us because I enjoy his perspective. We do a lot of spaces with him, and him and Aiden are just really, really smart.
He does the spaces with he runs the spaces.
Yeah, he runs the spaces and lets us in his house, right. And we appreciate that a lot. And him and Aiden just give really good insight. And they just started their brand new podcast, and great name for their podcast called Feed the Post, and it's available on Spotify right now. And they're working on getting it available across all podcast platforms. So make sure you're following Joe Jackson at Joe_Jackson 2210. And make sure you're following their brand new podcast, Feed the Post. Really good insight, analytical, and from a coach's perspective, Aiden does some high school coaching. So shout out to those guys. So, I think that about wraps things up for tonight. Any final thoughts you have, Kraig, before we say goodnight and goodbye and move on to this Davidson game on Saturday?
Man, I think it's just exciting times in general. And to the Purdue fans out there listening, you need to embrace this number 1 ranking. If you want Purdue to be a national powerhouse and you want Purdue to contend at the highest levels, you need to embrace this. The players embrace it. The coaches embrace it. It doesn't mean anything at the end of the day, but it does mean something to recruiting. It means something to NIL deals. It means something to just the stature of the program and how it's viewed. And don't kid yourself, come seeding day, it matters when those teams are consistently ranked in the top 5 year after year in terms of just psychologically where they think a team should land when they go to seed them. And seeding in the tournament matters. I don't care what you say. Those teams have an easier route when they're ranked seeded number 1 or number 2.
Right.
So we need to lean into this. We need to be happy about it, proud of it. And we're going to lose at some point. They're not going to go undefeated. It's not the end of the world. Enjoy the number 1 ranking while we can and lean into this damn thing.
Yep. Because like we were talking about, joking about with Bobby about Gonzaga. Do they play a tough non-conference schedule, but they don't have a tough conference. And everybody, when somebody like me and Bobby, cry about the fact that they always get a 1 seed, the rebuttal to Gonzaga fans or defenders of Gonzaga are, well, they go far in the tourney every year. Well, you know what? It's easy to go further in the tourney when you're a number 1 seed. And, for this team, you see this picture here, great, the Purdue social media staff is one of the best in all of sports, professional or collegiate level. They put out this great picture of last year's team and this year's team, winning their tournament, games against North Carolina, Villanova, Gonzaga, and Duke, and that propelling them to being a number 1 seed or a number 1 ranking these last 2 years. And you're right. It puts them in a totally different stratosphere of coverage and relevance and recruiting and everything else across the board. Brian from Rensselaer.
Oh, man. Right. I'm sorry. I see Mike was cracking me up with those last 2.
No, we love Mike, and we appreciate him hopping in. And so, these things are huge. And if Purdue can start consistently getting one of those top seeds, the more chances they're going to go further in the tournament and they keep knocking on the door, eventually they're going to get through. It's going to happen. It is going to happen on Matt Painter's watch. I feel very confident that Matt Painter's a huge Cubs fan, season ticket holder. I'm a huge Cubs fan. Bobby's a big Cubs fan. I don't think Kraig cares about baseball like we do. But, I felt this with the Cubs. The Cubs were a cursed franchise. And once they started getting that talent here, they started to knock on the door a little bit. And that nervousness in the fan base, I think, is very similar between the Cubs and Purdue. I talked about this a little bit last year too. And I think it becomes a it when you see it kind of thing. And for some fans, I don't think they felt that confident of how the last year's team was going to go into the tournament. This year's team does feel a little different. I know we've moved off of the comparisons, but I do feel like this team has a sense of composure about them. I think they showed that at Nebraska. I think Zach Edey is showing that with his play and his leadership and the story of him putting that text out to his teammates about, hey, let's keep our heads down. They play for each other. They get on the floor, they fight, and there's a lot of elements, like Bobby said, that are going to help keep them in games when shots aren't falling. So, the fact that there's a lot of players from last year's team that went through that experience of being the hunted all year long, being in the top 10, being the number 1 ranked team, getting to the tournament, getting to the Big Ten championship, and ultimately not coming through with their goals, I think that's going to help transfer over with this team, and then we'll see how far the freshmen can continue to elevate at their young stage of their career. I'm not going to put, crazy expectations where it's like do or die and the end of the world if they don't achieve those goals, but I think there's a very strong chance that they could. So we'll have to wait and see, and I'm excited to cover it all with you, Kraig, and you're going to have to always keep me down and temper my expectations because, yes, when I was first asked on CHGO Big Ten After Dark, when's the first time Purdue's going to lose, I started looking into February. I had skipped over January. I was like, well, these teams are going to beat in January. And then I was like, wait, stop. Let's try to be fair to this for a minute. I'm trying to keep a level head. And I'm sorry for those that are not Cubs fans or hate the Cubs. You are not going to shout out Steve Bartman on this show, Icy Mike. All right? Listen here. Then we're going to have some decorum in the chat.
I think his point is that he's just not a baseball fan in general.
Yeah, I know.
I would just as soon watch synchronized swimming as baseball. He's probably a Sox fan
with his little Steve Bartman thing. I'm just saying, I just feel a similarity with the fan base. There's a lot of sky is falling with Purdue fans. And like I said, you've known Purdue fans a lot longer than I have. I'm just getting ingratiated with this fan base.
No, it's the
5 or 6
whole
years.
We can't have nice things like the Glenn Robinson injury, the Robbie Hummel injury, the Isaac Haas injury, the getting upset by St. Peter's last year, or whatever it is. There's that feeling of there's an impending doom somewhere, but somewhere along the line that's got to break. And I like to compare it to, Tony Bennett at Virginia. Virginia felt very similar to that for a long time. And then they eventually broke through. And I think Painter and Bennett are very similar people, both stylistically, analytically, and how they want to build their programs.
And Villanova too, with Jay Wright. Yeah. I think those 3 coaches are very similar.
I think we'll get that breakthrough at some point. Along the way, I just think it's coming, but I don't have a lot more. I'm excited about how things are going to go the rest of the way. I will push back a little bit in terms of this narrative of we know for sure this is different than last year, only because I feel very protective of last year's team for some reason. But go back to December 14th. Today's date last year and really tell me how you felt about last year's team on December 14th, because a lot of the things that we look back with hindsight, hindsight's 2020. A lot of things we look back with hindsight, we weren't saying on December 14th last year. So Like, let's just settle down a little bit in terms of where we're at and saying this team isn't that team, blah, blah, blah. Now, where I think you are right, Greg, is I think this team, and why it's important that we were ranked number 1 for a second year in a row, is because this team can learn from last year's team and how the progression of that season went and realize, hey, got to play team ball all the way through, got to stay focused all the way through, all those sort of things. They can build off that. But I think those things have to happen first. There has to be a team that pushes forward and is almost there but doesn't break through before you finally do break through, you know? I think Eminem said something like that.
Yeah, as we quote the great Eminem. No, I agree. And last year at this time, I was as hyped as anyone. But the irony was in that Nebraska overtime game, there was some symmetry there because that was the 1-year anniversary of the Rutgers game. And we all know how that ended. And everyone was expecting Tominga to hit a half-court shot to beat Purdue that day. You know, it just felt like that kind of a game. And
so I shouldn't have said December 14th. I should have said like December 11th, but whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like about the same time.
I said it after the Florida State game last year. I didn't think they were going to lose a game. And then after Purdue went through the gauntlet in Portland and tore down institutions, like basketball institutions like Duke and Gonzaga, I was sitting there like, you know, how's this team going to lose? And then they go to Nebraska and you're like, oh, this is how they could lose. You know, Braden, I think, still has Braden and Fletcher. They're both young. They're going to have their growing pains, but we saw Braden Smith's growing pains were on full display at Nebraska. I think there's an erraticness to his play that it sometimes can be
controlled chaos.
Yeah, it's controlled chaos. Exactly. He wants to play like that, but I think sometimes that's going to cause a turnover here or an overplay on defense there. And then, you know, the way they played Zach Edey, it was the first team that really had a good game plan against Zach. So, and we still haven't even met the game where Zach's in foul trouble for 40 minutes. And that's going to eventually happen. And how do they adjust off of that? So there's it's a chess match that there's nobody I trust more than Matt Painter to handle, but they're going to have to play that chess match and we'll see how they handle it. But yeah, long season to go. But I do have a lot of confidence in these guys and what they've shown so far. But yes, I am a homer. That's what I do. That's what we do here at Brags and Stands. Kraig keeps me honest. I keep myself blowing off the top of the roof as far as expectations, and we'll just have fun with it as we go. And we'll continue to cover this team, you know, and do our best we can. We'll try to get maybe another show in before Big Ten play starts as we get through the holiday season. You know, maybe bring on another current player or a former player. We had a lot of great guests last year that were on the former end of things, you know, Isaac Haas and Robbie Hummel and, you know.
Dude, we got to get Etuan on, man. We got to find a connection.
I would love to get Etuan more on. He is a region guy.
You were a Bulls fan, man, and he's a region guy. Like,
I'm a region guy. I watched him in high school. I'm a Bulls fan. I watched him play for my Bulls. You know, and obviously he was an all-time great for the Purdue Boilermakers. So definitely would love to get Etuan Moore's perspective here on Brags in the Stands, and we'll do our best to get him on at some point. So a lot of good guests still to come. Make sure you tune in and make sure you follow us on Twitter. Follow Kraig Bowers at Kraig Bowers 34 and follow myself on Twitter at gbragsjr23. A lot of Bears stuff on there. And if you follow our show channel at Brags in Stands on Twitter, we do a lot of Purdue-centric stuff on that channel. So thanks again for everybody that tuned in. We're excited for Saturday. That's right, Joe Jackson, the 219. Make sure you follow Joe Jackson once again on Twitter. They'll be doing a live spaces immediately following the game on Saturday. At least I think they are, as putting Joe on the spot here. But they typically do after every game. So we like to hop in those, and we'll see what Purdue can do with Davidson on the primetime stage down in Indianapolis. I think Craig's going to be down there. I'm 50-50.
I don't know. I got to buy a ticket because somebody
I dropped the ball.
Somebody didn't fill out the
Don't make me do the playoff music here. Don't make me put the playoff music on. Yes, I dropped the ball for credentials this weekend. You know, bad timing and trying to do the juggling act with all the different coverage that we're bringing here from this little studio.
I don't want to hear this Brags.
Yeah, I got them all. I got excuses for days, but we will be covering everything at Mackey. So we're hoping Purdue can get through Davidson so we can cover the number 1 team in the country playing at Mackey for the first time ever as the home team, as the number 1 team in the country here in a week or two, whenever the next time they play at Mackey. So thank you again for tuning in. Thank you again to our special guest, Fletcher Loyer, killing the game, getting to that number 1 spot and being on the graphic for the number 1 team in the country. Must have been a pretty cool thing for him. 2-time Big Ten Freshman of the Week and most points by a freshman in his first 10 games in Purdue basketball history. Third most behind Russell Cross and Kyle Macy and ahead of the likes of Walter Jordan, another guy I would love to bring on.
Sometime. Dude, we should. He interacts with both of us on Twitter, and he is a major ambassador for Purdue basketball. Let's reach out to him.
Walter Jordan.
Put that in your notes. Put that in your notes. Yeah, Walter Jordan.
I promise I won't drop the ball with these things. Walter Jordan, Rafe Davis. Raphael, I know. Raphael Davis, who we had on last year, a great guest and does great work for Big Ten Network and everything. So we're going to try to get as many good guests as we can on. We'll ramp it up as we get into Big Ten play. So thank you again for everybody that tuned in. Thank you once again to Fletcher Loyer. Thank you to our guy, Bobby Riddell, Bobby Buckets. And thank you to Joe Jackson and everybody else, Icy Mike and everybody else, even my guy Chubbs at the beginning of the show, an Illinois fan, but he's been absent on Twitter for the last few months. So I missed my arguments with him, hopped in and gave us some shit and then gave us some kind words. Thank you to everyone that tuned in. Stay tuned for the coverage going forward. And always boiler up. Yeah, baby. Boiler up.
Boiler up, Brags in the stands. Let's go.